Hello, this is Adam, and welcome to the Anderson system. The Anderson system is a DID system that lives inside of me. And there's roughly 13 to 14 alters, depends on how you count them. And you never know. There always can be more alters that are under me or inside of me, I would say, that I have not discovered yet. And so this channel is basically talking about DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, and taking away the stigma that people may experience when having DID. And so today's video, I want to be talking about being black having DID. Again, being black while having DID. Now, being black in America is challenging enough. Now, we heard about the protests and George Floyd and Derek Chauvin and all that stuff that happened last year. We had a bunch of protests, Black Lives Matter protests, and we were actually talking about it as a nation a little bit about race, about racism, and about how we treat other people in society. Even just thinking about it, less than 200 years ago, we had slavery in America. And so America has struggled with this original sin called racism. And our racism takes place in every area of life. It can take place in the grocery store, it can take place in church, it can take place at work, it can take place almost in every area of life. And so as an African American, I have definitely experienced racism. I've experienced racism on different levels. I've experienced racism that is subtle. And I also experienced racism that was pretty much not covert, but it was mostly like in your face kind of racism. And so I experienced kind of both sides of that issue. And so when you have DID and you're black, it's a double whammy. It's like having two things against you that you're fighting. The two things that you are battling is first being black, second is having a bunch of personalities. And one thing about having a bunch of personalities, each of my personalities are different. I have some alters that are white. I have some alters that are Asian. I have some alters that are Jewish. I have some alters that are English descent. I have some alters that are atheists. I have some alters that are Muslim or Jewish or Christian. I have my alters actually are like the rainbow. I kind of call them the rainbow connection because it's kind of like that. And so my alters differ in the way they express themselves, even sexuality and gender. I have some alters that are female, some alters that are male, some alters that don't identify as male or female, but they call themselves they. And so I have different types of these rainbows, you can say. And so since I have rainbows that live inside of me, sometimes rainbows can bring rain, you know? And so I've experienced racism, especially with the cops. And the cops are not really friendly of anyone that's not them, especially if you're not particularly a white male. They tend to get upset with you. And so when it comes to my alters, I had to train my alters how to talk to the police. Because every black person that I know had to talk. Now, what do you say, Adam? What do you mean to talk? Well, the talk is this. My mom gave me the talk when I was probably like 13 or 14. And the talk went like this. Son, one day you're going to get stopped by the cops. And when you get stopped by the cops, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. And when they question you, always keep your hands by your side. Never raise your hands to the officer, nor raise your voice to the officer. And just say, yes, sir, no, sir. If it's a girl, yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am. And be very respectful. She says if you try to do those things, it will limit your chances of getting shot and killed in the streets. And so that was a talk that my mom gave me as a black person. Not to engage the police, or at least don't become that threatening black male that they perceive me to be. Now, when I had alters, these alters had to learn how to adjust to that understanding. Because some of my white alters, they kind of like struggle with this. They really did. Especially one of my alters, Nicole. She struggled with this. She says, why are the police treating us that way? Why the police don't see us as innocent? Why don't the police don't see us as the girl next door? Which the girl next door of where we were was white. And I had to explain to Nicole, I says, Nicole, even though you are white and you have that world view, you live in a black body. And so since you live in a black body, the rules are changing. The rules have changed. And so the officer doesn't see you, Nicole, as a white woman, but he sees you as a black person living in me because you're just basically a consciousness inside of a black body. And so I had to explain that to my alter, Nicole, and a couple of them as well. I think like 3 or 4 of them, about how it feels and how do you respond to policemen when you're in that situation. And so they learn how to adjust. They learn how to protect the body, because that's what alters do. Ultimately, they protect the body. I had to teach them how to do that when it came to racism. And so they learn how to go undercover and talk like me, act like me, and they also know how to. They brought like an extra level of respect, like to the cop or to the officer, because I had to tell them, I says, Nicole, you can't treat the officer like you were a white woman, because maybe you can get all, all don't try to be a how could I word it? Don't try to be all uppity. That's the word. Don't try to be all uppity to the cop. Don't try to give the cop smack or lip. Don't try to be a Karen, basically. Just say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, whoever stops you. Don't try to act like Karen in a department store that you want to see the manager. Because that's how Nicole was at first. She was like, can I go talk to the manager? I'm like, hell no. We don't go talk to the manager. We're not getting shot. And so she had to learn how not to talk to the manager. And so I had to teach Nicole, Kimberly, Ashley's one of my alters. She's kind of half mulatto, but she has a lot of understanding of how it is to be white. And so I had to teach her something she already knew already, but something she didn't. And also Abby. I had to teach Abby how to be black, even though she's white. And so Abby had to adjust how to act around police officers. And now when it comes to having DID with that, when it comes to my littles, now what are littles? Littles are basically alters that are in a certain age or a certain state. And I have littles. I have some littles that are 5, some that are 10, some that are 8 and 7. Those are the age ranges of my littles. And so the littles I have within my psyche, I tell them we're not going out. And so it's a rule that I will not let my littles out in public. I'm sorry. I says, if you guys go out in public, my black ass is dead. You can't act like a kid in a black man's body. You know how frightening that'll be to people? They'll be like, what the fuck is going on? They'll be like, what in the world is going on? Either they'll think I'm lost my mind. And B, I'm extremely more dangerous than I was before. Because it's one thing to rock a hoodie and be black. It's another thing to rock a hoodie, be black, and act like you're like a freaking 5 or 6 years old. You want to play with the kids. You don't do that shit. You'll get your ass shot. And so my rule with the littles is we don't go out. We don't go outside. We can go inside and play Monopoly in the house. We can go inside and have toys and video games. We can do all the kid shit inside. But when you go outside, hell no. Because my black ass is not getting shot. Hell no. And so my boy Edward, he's white, but he understands what's going on, And so Edward, what he does is Edward will like entertain the littles and tell them we're not going outside. We're not doing that for Adam. We're not fucking up Adam. We're not gonna make sure that he doesn't get shot or killed. And one of my alters, Kevin. Now Kevin is a black, and so Kevin tries to relay his experience to the other alters that don't really get it. The Caucasian alters don't really understand it as much, and he tells them, you can't do this or you can't do that. And it's kind of cool though, because with the female alters, they also tell me things about my male privilege, because as a male, males have privilege too as well. And so sometimes I get a privilege being a male that maybe females don't get, because when it comes to stereotypes and stuff, people cannot like you because you're black or gay or trans or a woman or a man. Like that shit comes in all different types of flavors. And so there's privilege I get just being a male, and then I admit that, and it's wrong. And there's also privileges that people get because they're white, and that is wrong. And so what happens is that we live in a society where we compare each other based on these different traits, which is a wrong thing to do. And so Nicole was teaching me as a man, how does it feel to live in a man's world, and how she responds to that as a woman. And that's just fascinating to me. And I have great respect for women. And Nicole's been teaching me all this stuff. And Kimberly, too, has been teaching me all this stuff about what women deal with. Because, cops don't like women either. And so they teach me all this stuff, too. So it's kind of like twofold. I'm teaching them, well, this is how it feels to be black. And she's like, well, this is how it feels to be a woman. And so I'm learning that. And also my alters who are gay, they say, hey, man, this is how it feels like to be a gay male. Or this is what it feels like to be a gay female. And they educate my ass. They teach me how to do those things and how to respond differently. Because each of my alters, they respond to different things differently. And so an encounter with a police officer for me is traumatic. And so instantly when I'm driving in the car and a cop stops me, that's a traumatic shit. And so I instantly will start will instantly start shifting. I instantly will start switching because I'm in a traumatic state. And so one of my alters will come out, and most of the time it's Kevin. He knows how to deal with the cops because he's black. And so that's kind of like Kevin's job. Like if there's something that the cops are doing, whatever, or it can be even like a random traffic stop because there's some psycho on the street and they're just trying to weed everyone out, whatever it may be. Kevin can handle the situation. He knows how to talk to the cops. He knows how to connect with the cops. And so Kevin saved my ass from bullets, and I thank him for that. And so again, being black is tough. And also my number one situation, I was getting followed by security in a department store. And this happens to me many times, getting followed by security in department stores. And so when this happened, Nicole, I was telling Nicole, I'm like, Nicole, this guy's following us. He thinks we stole something, which we didn't, obviously. And Nicole's like, no, Adam, we didn't steal anything. He's just probably just walking around. He's just probably just doing something innocent. And so Nicole really thought the security guard was doing something innocent. And I'm like, no, Nicole, that's not innocent. He's following my ass because I am black. And she didn't get it. That shit went over her head. She's like, no way. We're past that. I'm like, Nicole, we're not past that. You live in a black body. You are a white girl trapped in a black man's body. Hell no. He is following her ass. And so Kevin had to front. And so when Kevin fronted, what happened was Kevin's like, nah, he's doing it. And so what Kevin did, we just stopped. We turned around and we asked the security officer, why are you following us? Now, he didn't know before that I used to be a security officer, so I knew all the 5 steps of security. So as a former loss prevention officer, I kind of able to speak his language, and he backed off really quickly. He said, oh, you know about this stuff? I'm like, yeah. I'm saying, why are you following me? Who's your manager? Let me talk to your manager. And he backed off really quickly. And so I was able to diffuse that situation. But what happened was that Nicole didn't get it. She didn't know that we were being followed because her worldview was different. Because when my brain split as a kid because of the trauma, one part became white, one part became black, and one part became Asian and different. It's like a rainbow. I call my alters a rainbow connection. That's the only way to describe them. They had a rainbow connection because they're diverse, which I love. I love the fact to have diversity inside my skull. I think that's beautiful. And so living with DID is tough, but it's even more of a challenge if you're a woman, because DID affects women more than men. So if you're a woman out there, you have DID, I feel you. That stuff is tough. I feel you. Men can be sick. I feel you. And if you're a person of color, or if you're gay, or if you're whatever your situation is, I feel you. Because it's one thing to have a mental disorder. It's another thing to have something on top of that society may demonize you because of it, and it's not right. And so I also like to talk about mental health in the African American community. The African American community never talk about mental health. They never talk about how mental health affects young black and brown people. And it does. And so they don't actually talk about how that is. And I'm pretty sure there's some dudes or some females in the hood that have DID, but they don't know how to express it and never heard of it, and no one in their family ever told them anything about it. And so if you're African American out there and you have DID, you may not even know it. And so if you're watching this video, search it out, look it up, Google it. There's tons of videos here on YouTube. There's even my videos that can help you understand this this disorder much more better. And so, yeah, and I hope that there'll be more awareness in the African American community of DID, because there's abuse happens in the African American community. We don't talk about it. That's something that we keep on a down low, and it's not cool. It's not cool at all. We got to talk about abuse that happens in the black community, because you wonder why there's black and black crime. Well, if there's black and black crime, which happens, yes, a lot of it's because of abuse. You don't go around shooting people unless you've been abused. But we don't talk about it in the black community. We just keep that shit on low key. But we need to talk about that. That's stuff is straight up real. And so anyway, this is Adam, the host. And so, yeah, that's how it feels to be black and having different types of alters in your head. And I'll check you out in the next video. Peace.